Hey guys, it's Kevin in my review for The Prom. So what The Prom is essentially about is we center on this group of theater actors, and basically they are a bunch of has-beens pretty much. They once were a very talented bunch, but they two of them recently, Dee Dee and Barry Glickman, they put out this show that really has just gotten panned because people see them as very selfish and narcissistic. So basically, in an effort to redeem their reputations, they decide to look for a cause, and while searching, they come upon this girl named Emma who basically has been rejected from her high school prom because she wants to take her girlfriend to prom, and the PTA is not okay with that happening. So the theater actors decide that they're going to use this as a way to hopefully, redeem their reputation, but also put an end to the bigotry that is going on within the school overall. The Prom overall, I was obviously very excited for this film, but I also was very skeptical. I'm not going to lie to you, because on one hand, it's one of those things where any musical that comes out, you guys know I have some level of excitement for, because I love musicals. I love that aspect, of film, and especially in a year where we've had so few of them. Theater has been closed forever, since like the beginning of this pandemic, and it's not opening again until like April, and all the other musical films coming out this year were indefinitely shelved. In the Heights isn't coming out till next summer. West Side Story is coming out God knows when at this point. The Prom is the only film remaining of the musical films to come out in 2020. Of course, the adaptations, we had a few original ones, but in terms of adaptations, this is the only one to really come out. So I was just really pulling for this film. I was hesitant because of the fact that it is a very recent show and it just came out, and I wasn't sure if they were going to be able to do it in a way that didn't feel rushed, but I was still really pulling for this film. I was really hoping it could be something fun, and I am very happy to say that though The Prom is not a perfect film, really at all, this is just the really fun, cheesy musical delight that I absolutely needed in 2020. This reminds me why I love musicals as much as I do, and I really couldn't have asked for anything more than what we did end up getting here. So we're just getting to right now, though, starting off with the cast, and that is definitely one of the best things about this film for sure. I think if the cast was not as good in this film as they were, because a lot of the film is very much dependent on the cast here, I just think this film would not be nearly as entertaining as it really was. And we really do have a really great cast of actors here, but let's first start off talking about Meryl Streep, who I think is just perfectly casted as Dee Dee Allen. This is easily, I think, one of her best roles yet. She really sinks her teeth into this role, going all out on just showing how much of a diva and narcissist that Dee Dee Allen really is, but also showing that she's a bit more complex as a character. There's more that Dee Dee Allen has been through than at the surface, and I think Streep leaned into that very well. She was absolutely hysterical in many parts, but she also wasn't afraid to dive into the true heart of this character, and I really did appreciate that overall. I just thought Streep was such a consistent highlight. She is so entertaining in this role, and every time she came on screen, I just absolutely loved everything that she was doing. And I know Streep is someone that, we expect her to be good, but I really do feel like this is one of her most impressive roles in a while, and I just really loved what she ended up doing here. Definitely one of the best parts of this film, for sure. Now, of course, we can't talk about Meryl Streep without really addressing the elephant in the room in James Corden, because he has very much been a very controversial pick for this role, and I will say right now, yeah, he's very much miscast, and I don't think it's nearly as, offensive as a lot of people have said, and maybe I'm not the right person to say that because I'm just some stupid straight guy, but, I do think that overall this is a performance that requires a lot out of an actor. A lot of the, actors in this, a lot of the Broadway actor characters in this film relies on the satirical element of it all, and especially them poking fun at themselves. And since Corden is a straight guy, it's a very strange choice to cast him here, and it's just one of those things where Barry as a character, yes, he is definitely gay, play, but there's a bit more to him in this film besides that. You know, they try to dive a bit deeper into his character. He has a very emotional arc, and unfortunately, it just run very hollow for me. Corden's performance came off as emotionally hollow and very confusing, and he definitely is trying. Like, he's trying to really make this material work, but it just didn't really work, I think, from a casting perspective. It's one of those roles where I watched it and I kept picturing like Nathan Lane or someone else in this role. I just didn't really feel Corden was the best casting choice here. And I don't dislike Corden like a lot of people do. I actually think that he can be a very fun actor when he has the right role. I just think, unfortunately, this was just not the right actor to cast here. And I do think he is miscast here overall. But I think the other two actors in both Nicole Kidman and Andrew Rannells, they do an excellent job. And I really like what they ended up doing. They don't have the biggest roles in this film, but they really do leave a big impact. Andrew Rannells especially, I thought was absolutely hysterical in this film. He is so talented, and they really, I think, do a good job of showcasing it, and I really did enjoy what he ended up doing here. I thought the four actors overall had really good chemistry and worked off each other very nicely, and definitely one of my favorite parts of this film. But the other big standout of this film, without a doubt, and someone that everyone's going to be talking about, is Jo Ellen Pelman, who plays the character of Emma Nolan. And I really haven't seen her much at all before, and I know a lot of people were annoyed because they love Caitlin Kinnunen so much in the Prom musical. And trust me, I'm a big fan of her in that as well. Like, I've listened to the cast recording a lot for this show. You know, I've really come to love Caitlin Kinnunen as a talent. You know, I used to watch like her vlogs that she did on like Broadway.com. But the second that Pelman, you know, starts singing Just Breathe, I think a lot of that, I think a lot of that anger will go away and really go more towards just how talented Pelman really is here. Because I think she does a really good job of showing the awkwardness of Emma as a character, but also just how determined Emma is. I mean, this is someone who, she knows what she wants. She's not really going to let anyone get in her way to make sure that this happens. And you know, she's someone that really does think for herself in that way, and I really did like what Pelman ended up doing. Emma does have some emotional material in this film, and Pelman handles it all with grace. You know, you don't get the sense that this is a new actor. It's a really great breakthrough performance for her, and I really do hope moving forward Pelman is able to acquire more roles, because I really did like what she ended up doing. And same with Ariana DeBose, who definitely has more of a limited screen time than Pelman, but even her, I mean, every scene that Alyssa is in, you really do get the sense of who she is. You understand that the conflict that she is dealing with, and I thought they did a really good job with it overall. Pelman and DeBose have such incredible chemistry. They really do work very well together. You get the sense that these two do really love each other. And you also get the sense that Alyssa does care a lot about Emma, but she's just in a position where she cannot love Emma. You know, she cannot show her affection, unfortunately, in the way that Emma really wants her to. And I think that DeBose did a really good job of selling that role for sure. I really enjoyed her performance in this film. As far as the rest of the cast goes, everyone else does a really great job. Keegan Michael Key is fantastic, I think, as the principal here. I really enjoyed his role in this film. You know, he plays this principal that he cares a lot about this cause. It means a lot to him. You know, he really does see this as a civil rights case, and I thought he did a good job with that. But he also is a huge lover of theater. He's a big theater nerd. He's a big fan, especially of Meryl Streep's character, and he really does, I think, deliver that very nicely. He was really fun throughout this film, and I enjoyed him a lot here. I thought he did a really good job in this film. And Carrie Washington as well. This is a role that definitely is kind of campy, but Washington really does embrace it. I think she leans very heavily into the campiness of it all, and I definitely did enjoy her performance in this film. I will say the only other performance that just did not really work for me in this film at all was Logan Riley Hassell, who plays one of the bullies in this character of Kaylee. I just thought she was really flat here. Every single line of delivery, she delivers like this in a very bland delivery, and it doesn't really seem like there's much emotion that she's eliciting, and was not very convincing. And it sucks too because I thought the actress that played Shelby, the other bully, was actually really good. Like, she felt like a real person. Kaylee just feels so robotic throughout the whole film, and it's because of Hassell's delivery. Unfortunately, I just did not think she was that great. But aside from that, I think the ensemble here overall is very talented. This is a really great cast overall. That's to be expected with the Ryan Murphy project, but thankfully they very much do deliver in this film. Aside from those few performances I said, I think definitely they're one of the most consistent elements of this entire film. But now I really want to get to the directing here by Ryan Murphy, because that is one of the aspects I think a lot of people were concerned about going into this film, as I was going into this. Because while I enjoy Ryan Murphy a lot, I think he's a very talented director, I think recently he has not been delivering in the way we've wanted him to. A lot of his projects have felt either very overstuffed or very rushed in that way, and that was really my biggest concern going into this film. But I thought overall his directing was actually some of the better it's been recently. He does a really good job, I think, of sticking very close to the source material. He retains the satirical elements of the original show, but he also has a lot of heart put into this project, and I think he did a really good job with that. It never felt like he was trying to change the source material or didn't understand the source material very well. He understood the satirical elements. He understood that this is a very fun show that doesn't take itself too seriously, but he also knows when to take things seriously. And I thought his directing was very good overall. I wasn't too worried, I wasn't too bothered by anything that he really ended up doing. It didn't feel like a rushed project. It really did feel like he cared a lot about the show. It really did feel like he cared a lot about what it stood for, and I thought overall he did a pretty good job of adapting it. There really isn't too many complaints I have on the directing side of things from Murphy. I thought overall all of that was very well implemented in this film. I thought, his style also just did not get in the way of this film either. I think his almost campy style really works for this show because, again, a lot of it is a satire of sorts, when it comes to the Broadway actors. So I think, he was definitely a good fit for something like that. So I'm honestly not too upset with the way that Murphy ended up directing this. I thought overall his directing was very good here for sure. Yes, it's heightened, but it definitely does work for the type of story they're trying to tell here. But getting into the screenplay here, I thought the screenplay was actually really good because the story itself, again, I know a lot of people have been talking about recently how, it should be focused more on Emma and Alyssa, but I've always really enjoyed the four theater actors because I feel like it brings something fresh to this project. It almost feels at points like two different stories, but they coalesce together, I think, very nicely. You have these four Broadway actors that are very narcissistic, and they're very unaware that they are. They don't see themselves as that because they have not really had a moment outside of the spotlights, and you really do understand that throughout this film. But you also do get the sense that they're not really living the lives that they once were. Dee Dee Allen was once this very well-respected Broadway star, and nowadays, while some people still see her as that, a lot of them just are not taking her quite as seriously. You have Barry Glickman, someone who is a Broadway star of sorts, but people don't really recognize him all that much. You have Nicole Kidman's character, Angie, who is very much a chorus girl. She's never really gotten what she's wanted. Unfortunately, she's always wanted to be like Roxy Hart in Chicago, but she's always been demoted to a chorus girl, and so you kind of had that going on with her. And then Andrew Rannells' character, he's someone that he's a Juilliard graduate, but the most that he's really been able to do, because he's done mostly like community theater stuff, is this like pilot on like probably like an NBC show or something like that everyone references and that he's kind of embarrassed of. So you get the sense that these are four people that just are not really living the lives that they want in that way. They've kind of convinced themselves that this is their only path, and I think that was a really good arc for a lot of these characters. Dee Dee Allen especially goes through a significant shift in this film, and they lean a bit more into some of her regrets. She's had this divorce of sorts, and it's taken a bit of a toll on her life, and I really did like seeing that. I really felt like I got to know the character of Allen, and though a lot of it is played for laughs, they do a good job of really going through her character and trying to give her a legitimate arc, and I really did appreciate that. And same goes for Barry Glickman, who, again, James Corden's performance aside, the character's not bad. Like, what they do with him in this film, I think does legitimately work for the character. They add a newer element to this film that gives him a bit more to deal with emotionally. And again, though Corden's performance does ring emotionally hollow overall, I thought that the Barry story that they gave him, they expanded a bit more on his character, actually really worked for me. It drew a parallel between him and Emma that I really did enjoy quite a bit. You know, there's a reveal with Emma very early on in the film, and then we find out a very similar thing has happened to Barry, and it really did work in terms of the bond of those two characters. And again, I thought it really did make sense in terms of the story. It added that much more of a layer into there, and that's something I definitely did enjoy when it comes to this film's screenplay overall. But it doesn't take away, I think, from Emma and Alyssa's story. I think Emma is still a very well-realized character because, again, we get the sense at the beginning that Emma's someone that is very disrespected, but she's not really going to let that bother her. She's going to do what she can to fight for herself and not really let this get in her way. But you also do see what these Broadway actors are able to do for her. They do leave an impact. They do get her to be more independent, you know, not let others get her down. And I really did like that about Emma as a character. She's very likable. She's someone that I think a lot of people are going to identify with. And I think overall, you know, they still do a good job with developing her character. I wouldn't say that the actors take time away from Emma's story. I feel like they both got enough going on overall. Even Alyssa, who we know from the beginning of the film, you know, she is Emma's girlfriend, but she isn't out yet to people because of the fact that her mother is very much a bigoted perfectionist, and she's worried about how that's going to get in the way of things. You still understand Alyssa's story. You understand her struggle, what she's going through. And so I think they do lay that out quite nicely. And I think the story itself, again, yes, it's simplistic, but it really does work for this film. And I think people are getting too wrapped around the idea that, oh, because the story's simplistic, the story's not good. A lot of musicals back in the day had very simplistic stories, and they still very much worked. And that's still the case with The Prom. You know, I don't really care that the story is simplistic. I think overall it's still very well executed. And I think, again, the film's also really funny. The satirical elements of this film very much do still work for me. You know, I think there are a lot of really fun moments here. The way that the actors react to things, especially when they first arrive, it's one of the funniest scenes of the film. I think the film is very quotable in that way with certain things that they say, but also just the way that they act. They're so entitled in that way, but they're supposed to be. And I've heard a lot of people say these characters are very unlikable. They're not supposed to be likable characters. You know, they're supposed to be very entitled. They're supposed to be very narcissistic, but they're going through a character arc of sorts, and I think the film does lean into that pretty nicely, and I think the humor does handle that very well, especially with Dee Dee as a character. The film never really takes her all that seriously. Again, she does have some good moments overall as a character, but a lot of it is very much played for laughs, and I think it really does work. I found so many just hilarious moments in this film in terms of comedy, and I really did like that a lot. So I think that definitely does work in this film. I definitely did enjoy the story overall, and where it does end up going, I think, is going to be very inspiring for a lot of people. Yes, the message is one we've seen done before, but it's well handled here. It's not done in a way that felt heavy-handed for me. It felt like a very natural message. And no, it's not the most realistic portrayal of this story, but it definitely still does work, I think, overall, and that's something I did definitely appreciate. So I actually like the fact that they had some added layers to these characters. I like that they tried to keep the general story intact, but they added just a few things in there overall to give to these characters. Even characters, like I said, like, say, Nicole Kidman's or Andrew Rannells, they still have just enough in there. They might not have nearly as much going on as our main three in Dee Dee, Barry, and Emma, because they're definitely our main characters, but they still do have enough going on overall to where I can say I didn't feel they were underserved as characters, and I do think that they definitely did a good job overall. So I think the screenplay here is definitely really good. The cinematography in this film as well, I mean, again, it's just such a great reminder of why I enjoy musicals. It's very bright and vivacious, and everything is just so vibrant and colorful, and it's one of those things that really does stick out, as this is a Ryan Murphy production, but it definitely does work for this film. I think definitely the look and feel of it, it just puts you in such a good mood. It's very uplifting in that way, and I really did enjoy the look of the film. Sure, again, it's not the most authentic look ever, but it does work. Everything to be so realistic and, raw in that way. Some things I just need to be light and fun, and the look of this film, I think, very well does blend with that general sort of feeling, and I really did enjoy the cinematography here. The music as well. I mean, this is a cast recording that I've listened to for a long time now. Ever since they released the cast recording for this show, I've had it on repeat a lot. It's been a consistent highlight for me, and thankfully, all the songs, I think, are still very much highlights here. Some of them are even better this time around. Like Just Breathe, for example, was not one of my favorites on the original cast recording, but here it's one I can't stop listening to. Same with It's Not About Me. Meryl Streep's big entrance in the film. I mean, it definitely delivers on that front, and I think they did a really good job with that stuff overall. And the soundtrack is just such a delight. I mean, from smaller numbers to Andrew Rannells singing in this mall, to all of these bigoted kids about how they need to, not cherry pick the Bible, and they need to just have some common sense in Love Thy Neighbor, to bigger group numbers like Tonight Belongs to You and It's Time to Dance. I mean, these are just the big, elaborate musical set pieces that I really have been missing. It was just such a delight getting to see these songs play out in real time. Well, not in real time, but actually getting to see them play out, actually getting to see them worked well into the story. I didn't feel that there was any song that didn't need to be here, and I thought overall this was just such a consistent highlight in terms of the film. I absolutely love the music in here. I think it's definitely one of the best elements of this film overall. It's always been one of my favorite parts of the show, and that's still very much the case when it comes to this film. I think the soundtrack is just so incredibly catchy, and I really just it's one of those soundtracks where I doubt you're not going to be able to hum at least one or two of the songs coming out of this film, because to me, they're all just so great. I can't think of a weak link here in terms of songs. I think everyone really does have something to do in terms of music, and I really did appreciate that overall. And the editing, I think this film was honestly really well paced. I know a lot of people have said there is a point where something really dramatic happens, and it does for sure, and it's a very effective moment, but again, that's supposed to be the end of Act 1 in, the Broadway show. So, obviously there's going to be more left. So I didn't really feel like that dwindled. I didn't really feel like that made the film overlong at all. I was very much into it. I've seen this film twice now, and it's gone by very fast for me both times around. I just think the film was very well paced in that way, and I don't really have a problem in terms of editing overall. I think all that stuff is really well done. That being said, this is definitely not a perfect film. There are a couple things that definitely do bring it down for sure. The one thing I will say is that I already talked about James Corden's character, and James Corden's performance, as well as Logan Riley Hassell's performance. That definitely does get in the way of it. But aside from that, there are two songs in this film, The Acceptance Song and You Happened, and they're here, but they're heavily cut down in this film. The Acceptance Song, there's only 30 seconds of it that's played, and then it's basically just the aftermath is played as a joke, and I think it still does work, but I don't understand why they would cut the entire song out of the movie, because it's a song that just keeps building and building, and that's why it's so funny. And I felt like by cutting it down, while it was still funny, it wasn't as funny as it could have been, and I would have liked to see a little bit more of that. And You Happened as well. Most of the song is in there, aside from probably the most important verse from Emma and Alyssa. not only is it a really good verse, but it helps give a little bit more into their characters, and I don't know why they decided to cut it down. They still could have done it in the way that they did, but I don't know why they cut, like, that verse of the song out. It didn't really work for me. It was a very strange choice, especially when you have an entire film. There's really no reason to ever cut a song down, I feel like. I feel like it's as long as it is for a reason, and considering that basically every other song in this film is done in its entirety. There's really nothing cut out of them. It's just a really weird choice that these two songs, which actually happen back to back of each other, are the ones that are cut down. I don't really understand why they decided to go about the way. I just thought that was a very strange choice overall. Also, a scene with Nicole Kidman in this film that I really do like. It leads to this great musical number in Zaz, which I think is one of the highlights of the film for sure, but there's a conversation that she has with Emma where she talks about how she is best friends with her, and they don't really have a lot of screen time to really justify that. It just felt like a really weird line, and her role's not reduced. Like, a lot of people are saying, like, oh, her role was reduced. She has about as much to do in this as she does in the original show, from what I understand. So her role wasn't reduced. I don't understand why they threw that line out, because it felt much more like Emma and Barry are the ones that are best friends. I mean, there's scenes of them going to the mall together. Barry is someone that she relies on a lot. He really becomes like her closest confidant out of this group. So it just felt like a really weird sort of line, and I didn't really understand why they decided to put that in there. It just kind of threw me off overall. And the only other flaw I will say is that, though I do really like the ending of this film, and I do think that it is definitely a very effective ending for sure. I've always loved the big finale. It definitely does get a little too cheesy at points. There are some things that do happen in the finale that I just felt were a little too perfect. Ryan Murphy likes to go for these big, like, happy endings, and there was just one thing that happened in the film, and the first time I saw it, it didn't bother me, but the second time I saw it, I'm like, yeah, that doesn't really make sense in terms of this choice for this character. They wanted to wrap up a storyline a little bit more. I understand that. They wanted to make it feel a bit more satisfying, but I feel like if he ended things on a more ambiguous note, it would have made this storyline feel that much more impactful, so I just wasn't as into that. There are a couple other things that happened that just feel a little bit too convenient overall, and I think that does just bring down the film just slightly for me. But honestly, other than that, there are other things I could complain about, but they just, at the end of the day, don't really bother me in the way that I think this film really, that it has for some people. Really, going into this film, what I wanted was a very fun, lighthearted musical comedy romp, and that's exactly what I got here. Yes, the film can get very cliche. Yes, the characters aren't the deepest. Yes, it's not very authentic or realistic or anything like that, but really, I just don't care. I had so much fun with this film. It's honestly some of the most fun I've had with any film this year. Yes, there are definitely things that do hinder it. James Corden is very much miscast. I do think there are some strange choices overall creatively here, but they do add a few more layers to the story, which I definitely did appreciate. The performances that are great: Meryl Streep, Keegan Michael Key, Nicole Kidman, Andrew Rannells, Joel and Pelman, Ariana DeBose really are great here, and I think they really do anchor the film quite nicely. The musical numbers are incredibly entertaining. The cinematography is really good, and Ryan Murphy doesn't really, for once, get in the way of his own project. It feels like one of the most well-realized projects he's had in quite a bit. I think really if you're someone that has been missing theater and you really just want something really fun to watch that reminds you of why you enjoy musicals as much as you do, I really think The Prom is going to satisfy you. I think The Prom is something that is going to delight so many people, hopefully as much as it did for me. This is just such a fun film overall that I had such an amazing time with, and I am going to give The Prom overall a B+. We're over, guys, to my review of The Prom. Let me know what you guys saw this movie. I'll lift your thoughts, and we'll see you guys in my next video, and we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.